Around the time I was 10 or 11 years old, I played kick the can with 7 or 8 other children who lived in the neighborhood where I grew up. And in warm weather, in the summer, when school was out, we did this almost daily. And the general agreement with all of our parents was that when it was dark, it was time to go home. Of course, as summer progressed, darkness, cool as always, came earlier and earlier. And of course, if it was cloudy to begin with, then it came earlier still, a terrible injustice. And of course, as children, we reasoned that we didn't know this, we were reasoning this way, that darkness was a relative value anyway. And so when the parents called, we always had the option of hearing them or not hearing them. Nevertheless, when darkness fell, our parents would begin calling us, and their shouts would be mixed with our shouts of all income free. But make no mistake about it, we could hear our names being called, and then we had to choose our response. 2 weeks ago, Jesus' Father called him by name as he was standing in the River Jordan, named him his beloved, and he said, "This is my beloved Son." In this week's Gospel, Jesus responds to that naming, to that calling, and says, and as he reads from Isaiah, that the text is being fulfilled. And the text that Jesus reads is this: "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." Jesus said yes to that call. Now, for each of us at our baptism, we are named as Christians, and by our baptism, we are called to follow Jesus and serve others. We do not hear God's call with our ears necessarily, but with our hearts. Sometimes it is hard to discern what God's call is for us. Sometimes it is only in looking back over our life that our experiences will tell us how God was at work in us, calling us. So, what is your calling? Is your calling simply defined by what you do or did? Is your calling your job? That thing you do to earn money? Or is your calling in some way tied to your family life? Are work and family two different things? And then what about the church? Are you called to be a member of St. George's? And if so, what are you called to do as part of this community? So many questions. And of course, that's not all. Right now, as you're searching for a new rector, that task requires that you consider and know what future God is calling this congregation to embrace. Well, let's look for some answers and begin with our personal callings. For some of us, I think especially for us guys, our identity is tied to our work. Many men would describe their work as their calling. I think for some of us it's so extreme that the phrase, "thank God it's Friday," is lost on them. These people rejoice at the arrival of Monday morning. But it is my observation, starting with myself, that men, as we grow older, shift from identifying with our work and identify more and more with our families, friends, and hobbies. There's no right or wrong about this. They're just competing callings that shift in relative importance over time. I think that a calling is that thing which, if we didn't do it, we would be terribly unhappy. Or to put it another way, a sign of a calling is that it is something we love to do. Now, I myself am called to napping most days around 3 o'clock. And I love to do that. But loving a pursuit such as napping is not in itself enough to define it as a calling. So I think another sign of a calling would be the result of the activity. All right, one could say that the result of the activity of napping is beneficial health and so on, but I think you know where I'm headed here. So, loving one's family has obvious results, and loving one's work has obvious results. Loving, say, fishing is more subtle. Going fishing may result in fish or it may result in a sense of connectedness with nature. Both are good things, and I suppose that then is a kind of a calling. Now, the discernment team used Frederick Buechner's epigrammatic definition of calling, which I have used myself for many years, at the end of their statement, which begins with "Be God's people." Right? They quote Buechner and say, "The place God calls you to is where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet."